The Sacred Conspiracy by Georges Bataille. You can read this in Visions of Excess. An already old and corrupt nation, courageously shaking off the yoke of its monarchical government in order to adopt a republican one, can only maintain itself through many crimes, for it is already in crime, and if it wants to move from crime to virtue, in other words from a violent state to a peaceful one, it would fall into an inertia, of which its certain ruin would soon be the result. Marquis de Sade. What looks like politics and imagines itself to be political will one day unmask itself as a religious movement. Soren Kierkegaard. Today, solitary, you who live apart, you one day will be a people. Those who have designated themselves will one day be a designated people, and from this people will be born the life that goes beyond man. Friedrich Nietzsche. What we have started must not be confused with anything else, cannot be limited to the expression of a thought, and still less what is rightly considered art. It is necessary to produce and to eat. Many things are necessary that are still nothing, and so it is with political agitation. Who dreams, before having struggled to the end, of relinquishing his place to men? It is impossible to look at without feeling the need to destroy. If nothing can be found beyond political activity, human avidity will mean nothing but a void. We are ferociously religious, and to the extent that our existence is the condemnation of everything that is recognized today, an inner exigency demands that we be equally imperious. What we are starting is a war. It is time to abandon the world of the civilized and its light. It is too late to be reasonable and educated, which has led to a life without appeal. Secretly or not, it is necessary to become completely different or to cease being. The world to which we have belonged offers nothing to love outside of each individual insufficiency. Its existence is limited to utility. A world that cannot be loved to the point of death. In the same way that a man loves a woman, represents only self-interest and the obligation to work. If it is compared to worlds gone by, it is hideous, and appears as the most failed of all. In past worlds it was possible to lose oneself in ecstasy, which is impossible in our world of educated vulgarity. The advantages of civilization are offset by the way men profit from them. Men today profit in order to become the most degraded beings that have ever existed. Life has always taken place in a tumult without apparent cohesion, but it only finds its grandeur and its reality in ecstasy and in ecstatic love. He who tries to ignore or misunderstand ecstasy is an incomplete being whose thought is reduced to analysis. Existence is not only an agitated void, it is a dance that forces one to dance with fanaticism. Thought that does not have a dead fragment as its object has the inner existence of flames. It is necessary to become sufficiently firm and unshaken so that the existence of the world of civilization finally appears uncertain. It is useless to respond to those who are able to believe in the existence of this world, and who take their authority from it. If they speak, it is possible to look at them without hearing them, and even when one looks at them, to see only what exists far beyond them. It is necessary to refuse boredom and live only for fascination. On this path, it is vain to become restless and seek to attract those who have idle whims, such as passing the time, laughing, or becoming individually bizarre. It is necessary to go forward without looking back, and without taking into account those who do not have the strength to forget immediate reality. Human life is exhausted from serving as the head of, or the reason for, the universe. To the extent that it becomes this head and this reason, to the extent that it becomes necessary to the universe, it accepts servitude. If it is not free, existence becomes empty or neutral, and if it is free, it is in play. The earth, as long as it only gave rise to cataclysms, trees, and birds, was a free universe. The fascination of freedom was tarnished when the earth produced a being who demanded necessity as a law above the universe. Man, however, has remained free not to respond to any necessity. He is free to resemble everything that is not himself in the universe. He can set aside the thought that it is he or God who keeps the rest of things from being absurd. Man has escaped from his head just as the condemned man has escaped from his prison. He has found beyond himself not God, who is the prohibition against crime, but a being who is unaware of prohibition. Beyond what I am, I meet a being who makes me laugh because he is headless. This fills me with dread because he is made of innocence and crime. He holds a steel weapon in his left hand, flames like those of a sacred heart in his right. He reunites in the same eruption birth and death. He is not a man. He is not a god either. He is not me, but he is more than me. His stomach is the labyrinth in which he has lost himself, loses me with him, and in which I discover myself as him, in other words, as a monster. What I have thought or represented, I have not thought or represented alone. I am writing in a little cold house in a village of fishermen. A dog just barked in the night. My room is next to the kitchen, where Andre Masson is happily moving around and singing. At this very moment, as I write, he has just put on the phonograph, a recording of the overture to Don Giovanni. More than anything else, the overture to Don Giovanni ties my lot in life to a challenge that opens me to a rapturous escape from the self. At this very moment, I am watching this acephalic being, this intruder composed of two equally excited obsessions, become the tomb of Don Giovanni. When a few days ago I was with Andre Masson in this kitchen, seated, a glass of wine in my hand, he suddenly talked of his own death and the death of his family. His eyes fixed, suffering, almost screaming that it was necessary for it to become a tender and passionate death. Screaming his hatred for a world that weighs down, even on death, with its employee's paw. And I was no longer able to doubt that the lot and the infinite tumult of human life were open to those who could no longer exist as empty eye sockets, but as seers swept away by an overwhelming dream that they could not own.
Why are you alone?